Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, and a very good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Malaysia Accelerating Circular Economy Extended Producer Responsibility (EPR) webinar series. And today we are going to have a second session of this webinar. And I would love to remind everyone that this is pre-recording presentation. On behalf of MGTC and WWF, we would like to thank everyone for joining, and without further ado, join me to welcome our first speaker of today, TS Roslina Muhammad. She is the Sectoral Lead for Circular Economy and Waste, Cities and Industry Division from Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation. She's going to present on circular economy initiatives in Malaysia. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, and a very good morning. Welcome to the Malaysia Accelerating Circular Economy Extended Producer Responsibility (EPR) webinar series, and today we are having session 2. Before I start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Roslina Muhammad. I am with the Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation, and I am sectoral lead for circular economy and waste. Currently, I am handling few circular economy projects for MGTC. And today, I am going to talk about Malaysia's initiatives towards circular economy. 12th Malaysia Plan has been launched, and we can see the adoption of circular economy in various chapters. We would like to congratulate EPU for launching the 12th Malaysia Plan. And today we're going to highlight two chapters. One is chapter 8 and also chapter 9, which is relevant to the circular economy. So for the chapter 8, Advancing Green Growth for Sustainability and Resilience, where under accelerating transition to the circular economy, the transition from the conventional linear economy to the circular economy is needed to create more sustainable and responsible businesses and investments. It represents a systemic shift towards long-term resilience, which will generate green business and also new economic opportunities, as well as provide environmental and societal benefit. Under creating and enabling ecosystem for the circular economy, businesses, especially Malaysia's SMEs, encouraged to adopt the circular economy concept in the design, production, logistic, consumption, and waste management of products and services. And enabling framework need to develop as guidance for the economic sectors to shift to the circular economy that will map the entire value chain of products and services, as well as the stakeholders involved. For improving design and process of products and services, the design of products and services plays a key role in determining resource efficiency and promoting the circular economy. Therefore, businesses will be encouraged to design products that are more durable, repairable, reusable, and recyclable, as well as use recycled material as input. They will also be encouraged to update recognized green label. Okay, and then for lastly is for the implementing extended producer responsibility. Basically, I'm not going to cover the EPR into details because I do believe that other speakers covering this topic, but assigning such responsibility towards producer will incentivize producers to reduce waste at source and promote the production of environment-friendly products. Okay, let's go to the chapter number 9. Chapter number 9, where enhancing energy sustainability and transforming the water sector. There are about two important components, which is promoting innovative financing, where the existing green technology financing scheme will also be leveraged to inculcate water-saving habits and promote circular economy practices among water-intensive industries. and also develop sustainable infrastructure with cost-effective technologies. Okay, let's go to the slide number 3. Okay, for the slide number 3, we don't have much input, but this is something that we can share among us, where KPKT or the Housing and Local Government Ministries will establish the Majlis Ekonomi Kitaran Negara. This is a National Circular Economy Council that will be established as a holistic solution on the management of the solid waste in the country towards the reduction of waste into landfills. So the council would be the platform at the national level as a coordinator for a uniform between the ministry and states on product manufacturing, waste generation, solid waste collection, waste treatment, as well as solid waste disposal. And so we congratulate KPKT for going to have the National Circular Economy Council. And here we are going to talk about Kementerian Alam Sekitar dan Air (KASA), where under KASA there are 2 documents. The first is Malaysia Roadmap to Zero Single-Use Plastic 2018 to 2030, where it mentioned that circular economy roadmap will be developed in 2021. Recently, KASA has launched Malaysia's Sustainability Plastic Roadmap 2021 to 2030. And in this roadmap, there are 3 objectives. One is to sustainably address plastic pollution in Malaysia, ensuring economic development, environmental protection, and societal well-being. And number 2 is to provide guidance and promote sustainable business practices in ensuring plastic circularity and sustainability through circular economy approach. And number 3 is harmonize action along plastic value chain through adoption of the life cycle approach. And for the scope of this roadmap, they are going to cover for PET, HDPE, LDPE, and PP. And for the strategies, you can see there are many strategies there, but one of it is improving product design, collection, and sorting outcomes. Okay. And for the target, the first one is facing out problematic single-use plastic. And the second one is about 25% post-consumer plastic packaging to be recycled by 2025. And the third one is 100% recyclability of plastic packaging by 2030. And the last one is 15% average recycled content by 2030. And this target will be phase by phase. So if you wanted to know more detail on how it phased out, perhaps you need to get the document. You can go to the KASA website to get the document. And for the slide number 5, is we're going to focus on the Ministry of International Trade Industry. So MITI is currently developing Chemical Industry Roadmap, CIR, and expected to be completed by Q4 2022 next year, and we are looking forward to it. We don't have any detail much on this roadmap, but we are looking forward to it. Maybe later on they can share more details. Okay, and then for the slide number 6, is not really initiatives, but basically under MIDA, Malaysian Investment Development Authority, MIDA, they has this circular bioeconomy CBE unit, and they have many functions, which few of them, one is to develop leads and facilitate potential investment to circular bioeconomy projects by domestic and international investors, and also development and coordination of biomass feedstock supply chain involving resource owners and all relevant stakeholders to create sustainable local value chains to support higher value added investment. And their project and areas that they covered is bioenergy and biofuel, biochemical, biomass-based end product, waste to wealth project, biohub, and also cluster development. And there are some additional roles for that unit is basically create a new circular economy and symbiotic business models to transform the resource-based industry value change in Malaysia that includes waste stream utilization to offer vast economy growth and also new business opportunity. And also they are develop and deploy circular economy projects that offer complete system design and solution with a highly localized value chain through innovative partnership models and game-changing technologies to create additional wealth and also high-value job opportunities for Malaysia. So we are really looking forward to MIDA, and hopefully we can get more details on what are initiatives under MIDA. And for slide number 7, slide number 7 is very interesting where it's an industry survey by Malaysia Productivity Center MPC on the circular economy. So the survey was conducted to 500 Malaysian executives across diverse sectors such as electrical and electronics, automotive, F&B, rubber, plastic and resin, energy as well as palm oil products and also services. And majority of the respondents indicated that they are still in the early stage of thinking about the benefit of circular economy, focusing mainly on the operational benefits and also risk management. But if we take a look at the result of the survey, it was very interesting. 7% of the respondents are currently adopting circular economy practices. This is very good. And also 80% of the respondents are planning to shift towards the circular economy, and this is very motivating. And while 10% are trying to learn more before implementing, and we have 3% of the respondents are not considering circular economy practices at all. So if we take a look at the survey, based on this survey output, we should focus and guide. We should focus and giving guidance on 80% that planning to shift towards circular economy, and also we need to change that 3% perception. Instead of not considering, perhaps they may consider to change to the circular economy. So we thank MPC for this survey. This is a very good survey. And then for Petronas, Petronas has a circular economy unit and also very active supporting Malaysia towards zero single-use plastic and the development of Malaysia's sustainability plastic roadmap. So they are very active. They are supporting CASA and also engaging with all the stakeholders. And Petronas Chemical Group is spearheading a new economic model through a holistic approach, focusing on 4 key areas, which is innovation, infrastructure, education, and also cleanup. The models which bring about collaboration from all sectors like a government, industry players, NGOs, and the public, which aims to sustainably manage plastic. So we perhaps we can get more info from Petronas. Okay, here I'm going to talk about the my agency, Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation. MGTC is an agency under Ministry of Environment and Water CASA. So currently in MGTC, there's various circular economy projects and also collaboration program. The program that we have actively right now is CAPSI. CAPSI is the collaboration action for a single-use plastic prevention in Southeast Asia. So the project aims to reduce single-use plastic waste with a clear focus on upstream strategies of prevention and preparation for reuse. The project employs a blended approach consisting of policy advice on circular economy and extended producer responsibility approach in Malaysia, and also capacity development for the key stakeholders, local government pilot activities, and support for innovative business models that tackling SUP prevention. The project contributes directly to the SDG to ensure sustainable production and consumption, uh, SDG 12, especially the target 12.5, where by 2030, substantial reduce waste generation through prevention, reduction, and also recycling use. CAPSI is funded by the German Federal Ministry and also GIZ project. Okay, for the Malaysia's plastic sustainability roadmap, MGTC together with WWF has assist CASA in the facilitation the stakeholder engagement and also helping drafting process. So we are very happy that finally we have this roadmap, and now all we need to do is focus on the implementing and also action plan. So MGTC also has collaboration program with WWF in various webinar series this year. And right now we have this Malaysia Accelerating Circular Economy Extended Producer Responsibility, where we have session 1 last week. And also this is session 2. And MGTC also has a training program called Circular Economy Master Class, which is under HRDF and also EcoNet. Not forgetting under CAPSI, there is a technical working group which focusing on EPR. So where we have various relevant agencies, that is where we have brand owners, we have recyclers, we have a few agencies that is joining us for the EPR technical working group. Okay, and my last slide is basically I'm going to talk about the retail industries toward the circular economy. And this information, we get it from the Malaysia Retail Association, and they requested for us to give this presentation. So as mentioned here, the retail industry contributed 34.6% of Malaysia's GDP of about USD 358.7 billion in 2018. Yeah, and also this is basically sourced from Department of Statistics. So the practice of recycling is commonly adopted by the retailers. However, the retailers encounter some challenges even doing the recycling. Like for example, like carton boxes, yeah, carton boxes, where most supermarket, hypermarket, grocery stores would recycle their carton boxes that they have arranged recycling center for collection, and some reuse the carton boxes for further packaging until its end of life, and finally will end at the recycling center. And also other individual retail stores, those in shopping mall and also shop lots, done the recycling their cartons. For the shopping malls, they that provide segregation of the carton box, plastic, etc., that they are manageable. And therefore, shop lots, the carton boxes will be kept in the store to be accumulated until the recycling center collect or bring to recycle center or trash it out for alam flora collection. This would normally happen for non-chain store. Okay, but for the chain store retailers that most would have distribution center, they will be able to manage the carton boxes as it will be collected to distribution center and also recycle from there. That is for the carton boxes. Yeah, that is practices that all the retailers have today. And for the plastic, a lot of plastic wrapping are not recycled. However, some retailers already start reducing the plastic wrapping for individual items, especially when they transfer. Example, like clothing from warehouse to individual store where it will be delivered in the big bulk plastic, which will be reused. So that is basically, and what's going to happen next? Infrastructure for the recycling. So not providing or practice in the shopping mall, readiness of the infrastructure would facilitate adoption and encouraging more retailers to join the green initiative. So it encouraged to have the infrastructure for the recycling at the shopping mall. And then shopping mall also to be regulated to have segregation bin for recycling purpose so that all tenants could do proper recycling. Indirectly, this will encourage, further encourage the retail staff to inculcate such culture. And also they are planning to have constant awareness and information, especially to consumers with regard to recycling as well as education. So MRA actually have a lot of information that they've given us, but we don't have time to present. Perhaps we can have a special session with MRA sometime next year to present on what retail industry towards circular economy. So we're looking forward. So with this slide, I would like to conclude my presentation for today. Should you have any question, please do not hesitate to email me at roslina@mgtc.gov.my. With that, I would like to thank everybody for joining this webinar today. Thank you.
Thank you, TS Roslina. Now join me to call upon Puan Tahira, Interim Manager Plastics Initiative Worldwide Fund for Nature WWF Malaysia to give a presentation WWF study on EPR scheme assessment for packaging waste in Malaysia. Please welcome Puan Tahira.
Thank you to the moderator for the kind introduction. First of all, I would like to thank our co-organizer, Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation, MGTC, for this opportunity to share on EPR with all of you today. My name is Tahira, and today I would like to give a brief introduction to EPR, or Extended Producer Responsibility, and share WWF's study on customized EPR scheme for packaging waste in Malaysia. Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR, has been highlighted as a critical policy tool in both the Malaysia Plastic Sustainability Roadmap as well as the 12th Malaysia Plan as a tool to accelerate transition towards circular economy and also to tackle plastic pollution. What is extended producer responsibility? It's a policy tool that aims to make producers or give producers greater responsibility of their products and end-of-life management. It aims to reduce the environmental and economic burdens of waste management. Typically, governments use public funds to manage waste. However, EPR policy shifts the responsibility and cost of these products and packaging management to producers and importers themselves. Through this, it has some benefits. First, it encourages product eco-design by giving producers more financial accountability. It encourages reduction of unnecessary or unrecyclable packaging. It increases recyclability of packaging. It also increases or encourages use of recycled content in products and packaging. Second, it reduces environmental impacts by increasing end of life or disposed waste collection, treatment, recycling, and by improving material recovery to extend life cycle of these products and packaging. And it also reduces dependency on virgin materials An EPR fee is very different from tax or public fee, as fees are not collected by public fiscal authorities and it does not flow into public budget. EPR fees are collected and managed by a system operator called Producer Responsibility Organization, and they are exclusively used to manage or fund packaging-based management-related activities. This is an example of value chain, packaging value chain without EPR and with EPR in place. How EPR promotes circular economy? It promotes circularity by transforming our linear production model to a circular production model by making changes at 2 points. First is at the upstream level that encourage eco-design. Second is at the downstream level that encourage setup or improvement of waste collection, sorting, as well as recycling infrastructure. Understanding that EPR is very important to achieve circular economy, WWF conducted a study to understand Malaysia's waste management system, and they recommended EPR schemes needed for Malaysia. So for the study, we analyzed Malaysia's current waste management system and recycling market, especially for plastic packaging waste. And we did a cost-benefit analysis on the comparing current waste management with EPR in place. And based on this, we came up with a recommended EPR scheme for Malaysia. And the aim of this study is to act as a reference material to government as well as other stakeholders in development of EPR policy framework for Malaysia. And we want this to be a reference material for other industry players as well to make informed decision as well as innovation when to implement EPR. So looking at the waste management in Malaysia, we find the three significant characteristics shape the Malaysian context. First is that high-value recyclable packaging are already separated from our household waste to a relevant extent, and it's being absorbed by recycling systems. This applies especially to materials, rigid materials like HDPE, PP, and PET plastics. And extraction method largely done by informal sectors, and the value chain is dependent on a functioning market where there is value, the products are collected more and recycled more and so on. Second, looking at Malaysian recycling capacities, it is sufficient for these above mentioned materials, the locally generated and high value recyclables. However, we find that a huge number of recyclers and aggregators rely or import process imported recyclables occupying large capacities. And so far, there is no fully traceable documentation of these imported materials. Lastly, and most importantly, we find that low value and non-recyclables are mostly disposed of and collected together, meaning there is no systematic separate waste collection system and recycling of these low value recyclables. And looking at our governance structure, we have several ministries and entities involved in waste management. The two key ministries with specialized departments for waste management and recycling would be Ministry of Environment and Water, and specifically under the Department of Environment. And we have Ministry of Housing and Local Government with National Solid Waste Management Department, and we have SW Corp. And for non-ACT states, states that do not adopt Exit 72, we have the respective state governments, including state level departments, authorities, local authorities, for example, city councils, municipal councils, and so on. And for EPR, although we do have other ministries or entities with no direct link to waste management, but will play a key role in EPR planning. For example, Ministry of Trade and Industry meeting, and so on. So looking at the government sector players, we can see the complex jurisdiction with individual and collective responsibilities shared among these sectors. And we also see that in some of the roadmaps and plans that we see the interlink between these ministries or collaboration between these ministries are required to implement these roadmaps and so on. Looking at private sector, we see that several large-scale waste management companies are involved, and we see a wide range of informal sector participants who are participating in waste collection, sorting, and aggregation of recyclable materials. And as a result of a reduction in legal and illegal imports, we see the process volume of recyclables have generally declined, and many processes are operating below their current capacity. From our interview, we find that many processes have quoted that they are operating at least 20 to 40% of their capacity is not being utilized. And thus we see that any increase in local waste separation and recycling volumes can be absorbed to fit this in this current infrastructure. Informal sector typically involved in waste collection and recyclable item collections and so on. They do sell it to junkyards or other aggregators as well. Informal sector or informal waste collectors are the majority or the backbone of waste management or recycling in Malaysia. And we see a majority of post-consumer recyclables are being mobilized by them. And we see the strong role that informal sector plays could pose a challenge for the formal sector as well. Most informal sector focus on high-value recyclable items, and they do not collect the lower value recyclable items. These are some of the informal sector players in Malaysia. We also did a material flow analysis for post-consumer plastic packaging waste. And we find that through our study, we find that based on secondary data collected, we find that an estimated annual post-consumer plastic waste generated amount is 1,070,064 tons generated just in 2016. And looking at post-consumer plastic flow, we see that for the rigid materials, a rigid portion of HDPE, PET, and PP, most recycling processes estimated the recycling rate to be very high, between 70 to 90% being recycled. However, we find that some of these rigid monomaterials are not recycled also due to some property changes that limits the mechanical recycling processes. And when we look at the flexibles are hard to recycle materials like LDPE, polystyrene, PVC, and others, the recycling rates are very, very low. And looking at all of this, with the implication for effective EPR system for Malaysia, we need a clear responsibility within the government due to the multiple ministries and departments involved in the waste management system in Malaysia. We need a clear responsibility to be defined to ensure proper or effective EPR system to be in place. And we find that private sector play a huge role in the, recycling in Malaysia. So any recycling or EPR discussions should include the role the participants from private sector actors such as collectors, aggregators, processors, and consumer goods companies, and so on. We need to engage the informal sector players as well. Incentives to improve collection and need to be sorted, and that can also improve their livelihood and working conditions. We need to include civil society. We do find that a number of civil societies are involved in waste collection or education when it comes to recycling in Malaysia, and we can leverage both these actors in the current decision-making process and as well as in the future for design of EPR. We need a greater effort to manage flexible packaging. Flexible packaging is a huge problem in current waste management system. So EPR scheme with appropriate incentives to recover and recycle flexible plastics and to reduce the amount of non-recyclable materials need to be looked at. We need to, although we see rigid plastics are typically recycled, we need to ensure that higher share of rigid plastic packaging can be recycled. So EPR modulated fee structure that favors recyclable materials and discourage mixed materials can be looked at as well. And we need to have proper traceability and monitoring system from the point of waste collection up to the point of processing. Based on all of this, we would recommend the following as a customized EPR scheme for Malaysia. We need a mandatory EPR scheme. There are multiple EPR schemes available in a number of countries, but for Malaysia, we highly recommend mandatory EPR scheme because a mandatory scheme would provide a reliable financial basis for large-scale collection, sorting, and recycling of packaging, which is crucial for creating sufficient business along the value chain. And we need to ensure that all packaging materials, such as plastics, paper, metals, and other composites from households and as well as other equivalent places should be included in this scheme. And we recommend to have one non-profit producer responsibility organization as the system operator to ensure that the holistic, reliable, and fair manner of waste management, where the responsibility is assumed collectively through one industry-led system. EPR modulated fees, we recommend to have modulated fee structure where we can steer the recycling market through application of reduced fees for higher value recyclable packaging and increased fee for lower value recyclable packaging to be paid by the obliged companies. And lastly, we need strict monitoring and control systems to avoid fraud, and we need a strict and enforced monitoring controls and penalties to be imposed. And this shall be carried out by ministries such as KPKT and as well as CASA to ensure compliance of all actors. We need, as I mentioned, we recommend to have one non-profit PRO. Why is that we need one non-profit PRO, which is industry-led, is that it ensures a greater level of transparency, and it's generally provides lower efforts to control and monitor the system, and modulated EPR fees can be more effectively implemented. And EPR fees managed through this PRO can be used exclusively for waste management or recyclable collection, and as well as recycling and so on. And industry-led PROs setup can remain unaffected in case of change of ministries or change of portfolios and so on. We do recommend voluntary operating PRO to be set up, and we know in Malaysia we have one such PRO in place for now. And once we have a mandatory EPR scheme, then the PRO should become mandatory as well. So for PRO, generally to understand what a PRO is industry-led non-profit organization that ensures collective implementation of responsibility of producers, importers, and brand owners to collect and recycle post-consumer packaging. It kind of organizes the take back and information, share information on EPR obligations for which it receives a financial contribution from the obliged companies themselves. And it should be governed by the obliged industries and as well as government representatives. For example, for government representatives, it can be governed by federal and local governments, such as a representative from SW Corp, JPSBN, PBTs, and waste management companies, and the actors would be waste management companies, and producers, importers, fillers, or brand owners will be the obliged industries. And we want to iterate that a PRO is not a direct operator or owner of any collection infrastructure or any recycling plant or machinery in Malaysia. And it shouldn't be a company with a motive for profits. So PRO structure should be, as I mentioned, it should be regulations and should have regulations and should be monitored by government. And the system relevant packaging and products to be collected separately from other waste, which will be managed by the PRO. For in the initial implementation phase, we do see that most high-value recyclables will still be extracted from the in the existing value chain, and it is very important or necessary to develop a system for all relevant waste collection or relevant packaging, regardless of the market price. And the PRO should tender collection services to waste management operators. And the separate collection of all packaging, including the low valuable or non-recyclable packaging, should be established, and it should be traced and reported as well. And PRO can incentivize building up new sites or improving existing structures such as aggregators and material recovery facilities. And it is very, very important that imported waste should not be mixed or sorted in these sorting facilities, or shouldn't be incentivized by funds from PRO. Informal sector should be integrated, should be engaged through NGOs or aggregators in this arrangement as well. And the financial flow for PRO is that non-system relevant waste, for example, packaging that's not relevant or not covered, or any other waste that's not covered in the EPR system, should not be financed by the EPR scheme. And the cost for collecting and sorting of these recyclables shouldn't be dependent on the market price of the collected waste. And the sales revenue of the sorted material relies or depends on the recyclability of the recyclables itself. The higher content with higher content of the recyclable waste, with more positive market price, we can generate more revenues. And generally, the EPR amount of EPR fees is determined by multitude of factors. For example, the type of collection system, the recovery and disposal infrastructure for different type of packaging materials. As I mentioned earlier, the general guideline is that the fees will be lower for easily recyclable materials, for example, rigid PET, HDPE, and PPE, and transparent PET bottles, paper, and cardboards. And fees will be generally higher for low value or non-recyclable or even mixed materials like sachets, composites, beverage cartons, and other plastics. So in EPR, the enforcement and control system is very important, and we recommend two types of system enforcement to be introduced. First is that we need a system or a register to register the producers and importers, and this should be run by the PRO itself, where all obliged companies or producers and brand owners have to register, and the reporting should be made easy, where more detailed for higher value amount of packaging, and the value should be clearly defined. There should be a reporting period, whether it's annual or monthly. And the reporting should also contain the material type and quantities and so on. A public online registers where third parties can check the compliance of the obliged companies, and should also have tools or mechanisms to have complaint systems to report non-compliance. And of course, we do recommend in government agency to monitor the system to avoid any free riders. And second, we recommend that to have a separate register system for waste management actors, and this can be managed by parties like SW Corp. And this is to register waste management operators who will be participating in the EPR system to collect the recyclables. And this register would also ensure greater transparency and provide reliable basis for selection and managing the finance of the spending. SW Corp, why we recommend SW Corp is that SW Corp holds the knowledge about operating waste management companies and receiving reports from industries and so on. We need to make sure that since Malaysia does import waste from other countries, we need to ensure that payments are only made for processing domestic waste to waste management actors. And data collection is very, very important in every step of waste treatment. And PRO can contract third or external parties to carry out controlling of the system. And we did a cost benefit analysis of current waste management system and with EPR in place. And looking at the financial impact, we think EPR brings a lot of positive financial impact and as well as environmental and social impact. Namely, that we can see that EPR will bring or provide incentives to producers to rethink their packaging. And it also provides a positive market mechanism to the for waste collection or recyclable collection. And we can align the demand and supply of waste and recycling sector. And it also eases from the environmental impact. We can see that it eases the government budget spent to manage packaging waste, and the waste management or recycling of packaging waste can be independent from the public fees. And looking at the revenue from the recycling itself, we see a positive impact or a positive economic impact to the converters and exporters of high value recyclables. And we can see that Malaysia's recycling sector can become more competitive. And when looking at from the aspect of disposal, we see that it can reduce landfill cost of landfill operation and environmental abatement cost. And based on this study and based on the recommended EPR scheme, we also came up with implementation plan for this EPR scheme. And ideally, we see that a mandatory EPR should be in place by 2026, within 5 years. And for the first year, it is important to draft EPR policy papers or EPR draft EPR regulatory framework, and we need to strengthen our current institutional framework. We need to conduct multi-stakeholder consultations and roundtables through available platforms and future platforms. We need a voluntary PRO in Malaysia, and this has been launched recently. And we need to build capacity of our public and as well as private sector stakeholders in EPR related knowledge. And within 3 years, we need to have a legal framework to implement mandatory EPR, and it should be coordinated and coherent with the existing legislation. And we need to create the registers and as well as reporting systems. And we need more obliged companies to take part in the voluntary PRO, and more pilot projects to be implemented. And we still need to build capacity of our public sector and private sector players, including the small and medium enterprises in EPR. And within 5 years, we need to roll out mandatory EPR scheme in Malaysia. And we slowly in the 5-year framework, we need to transition from voluntary PRO to a mandatory PRO. And we need to define mechanisms on how we can continuously improve and optimize this function. Yes, I think in conclusion, we need a clear and effective and unambiguous legal framework as a first key step for EPR. And the legal framework for EPR should outline the clear objectives, responsibilities, enforcement mechanisms, and timeline for implementation and targets. And we see that role of government sector is very, very important, be it in the national level or in the local level, to ensure proper and full implementation of waste reduction and management laws. And EPR system complements other solid waste management related laws and policies. And it will only be effective if the general waste management system functions well and diverts recyclable content to the EPR system or scheme. And most importantly, the success depends on the producers or private sectors' willingness to redesign their product with reduction, reuse, and recovery in mind. And we look forward to hearing your feedback on this EPR work that WWF is doing. If you want to know more about our work when it comes to EPR, and if you would like to read our resources, please feel free to reach out to us through these email addresses. Thank you. And I also hope you will find more information from my colleagues who have presented earlier and as well as who will be presenting after my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Puan Tahira. Now, without further ado, join me to welcome our next speaker, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Johnson Yun, Malaysia Plastic Recyclers Association, MPRA. Datuk Johnson will speak about how Malaysian recycling industry can benefit from EPR. Please welcome Datuk Johnson.
Good days to all. First of all, I would like to thanks to MGTC and WWF for inviting Malaysia Plastic Recyclers Associations to give these presentations regarding how Malaysian recycling industry can benefit from EPR. Well, this is quite a big topic for recent years, especially in 2020. There's a lot of people is talking about the EPR, and a lot of government agencies are involved into to plan up the policy for EPR, which is really great for Malaysia. Okay, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Johnson. I'm a secretary for Malaysia Plastics Recyclers Associations. MPRA is a associations that represents majority of Malaysia plastic recycling industry players in Malaysia. Okay, so we are actually aggressively to move in to see how actually plastic recycling industry can be growth in Malaysia, and we did publish a white paper named An Advanced Plastic Recycling Industry for Malaysia in year 2019. Whoever's that interested can go to our website mpra.org.my to download the white papers. That's the ones that we published in 2019. Okay, how I would like to start how Malaysia Plastic Recycler Association MPRA in supporting of circular economy. I don't think that I would like to explain what does it mean circular economy. I do believe that a lot of people is understand about this. Okay, first of all, it's like MPRA always encourage our members to find any ways or alternative way to collect any locals plastic scrap. Everyone knows that few years back we are talking, the whole Malaysia is talking about importations of plastic scrap and all those things and so on. Actually, for us, the importations of plastic scrap is kind of complementary. It means that insufficiency of locals, then only we will import from overseas. Okay, so MPRA is always find ways to encourage all the members to utilize Malaysia's locals plastic scrap. And some of our members also working directly with the brand owners, okay, for their recycling activities. This is what currently happening. And of course, MPRA, we are one of the bodies who are more familiar with the plastic recycling. We always involve in those government agencies forums or any NGOs forums related to plastic recycling. And this is some of the effort that we put into our societies to support for the circular economics. So secondly, I would like to elaborate a little bit about the challenges to implement circular economic or sustainability. Okay, in Malaysia's, yes, no doubt that we have a law or policy for the separations of at source, meaning that from consumers, your household waste, how you should segregate it, and all those things and so on. I think we have quite a good policy. Yes, there's still quite a space for improvement, but currently, I think the most critical problem is we thinking is the enforcement issue for segregation at source. You see, segregation at source this has been implemented, I think, a couple of years ago, quite a long time ago. I do believe if you're talking about education periods, I think we're taking long enough time for educations to educate publics how to segregate at source, especially household waste. But at the moment, we still can see that this is not really the household waste is still in a mess, not really segregated in quite a lot of places. So this is one of the challenges that we're thinking government agencies or any NGOs or even public should actually aware of it, how important is to segregate source. Secondly is like the challenges in Malaysia is publics or even some of the body when they're collecting especially the plastic waste, they are not collecting in the correct way. When collecting plastic scrap, especially, you need to know that what plastic scrap that can be recycled, can send to mechanical recycling factory to recycle. So MPRA always try to actually to give some talks and to publish some papers to say what are the things that we are able to accept from mechanical recycling. So I give an example is like during pandemic times, you have a lot of tapao, bungkus, takeaway. So for example, the food containers, when you fill in with curry whatsoever, you didn't wash it, it's still very oily. A lot of mechanicals, plastic recycling factory actually don't accept it because it will take too high cost to actually to recycle it. This is one of the examples. So the awareness of how to collect the plastic waste in a correct way is one of the challenges that I think that we are facing now. Then of course, one of the important thing is like, I still remember a few years back when we talk about plastic recycling, we only can talk about the plastic waste from industry, not from the consumer or the household. Why? Because household, basically what they thrown out is those packaging or contaminated. When we're talking about packaging, during old times, the packagings like multi-layers packaging and all those things and so on, actually we can't recycle it. So it will be great, as what we say just now. EPR is one of the hot topics that I think governments would like to implement as a policy also. So as a brand owners or the producers, is their responsible to design their products or their products packaging in a recyclable manner. So this will help a lot when we collect it back and to maintain or reduce the cost of recycling. Everyone have understand like mostly plastics waste can be recycled. So the difference is the cost of recycling. That's why I mentioned just now, if your food container contaminated, for us, we can recycle, but the thing is like when we take back to the factory, we have to wash it again. So the cost will be very, very high, which actually not fulfill the economy of scale. So this is some of the things I would like to highlight to everyone. So ladies and gentlemen, as we said, how important of EPR to recycling industry. So EPR is not only involved in the producers to design their products in recyclable manners. It should also involve in how producers collect back the things that they produce. So if this has been can be established well, it means that plastic recyclers will have a consistent fixed stocks for us to do recycling. Plastic recyclers always face one serious problem is the sourcing problem. Where to get plastic to recycle? Yes, it sounds like a joke. Outside people are saying that there's a lot of plastics been sent to landfill, been thrown in the sea, in the drains. But the other side, in actual fact, recyclers shortage of stock to recyclers. So this will be something like sounds like a joke, but this is true happenings in Malaysia. So if we can have a continuous supply or consistent supply from local, they will definitely benefit us a lot. Why? Very simple. Because as local supply compared to the imported plastic scrap, we no need to wait for a few months to wait until overseas give us our resources, our raw material to produce. We can buy it from local. It's fast, and we can use our eye to see whether the cleanness of the materials. So it definitely will benefit us a lot. And well, we definitely will fasten our once we collect, we immediately can produce instead of we order from overseas and we need to wait for months to reach here, then only we produce. So in terms of financial circular, it's actually helping a lot. So that's why MPRA all the while supporting for the developments of the EPR. Okay, for the next, how we feel that the transitions towards circular economic and implement of EPR. Oh, we think that EPR should be made mandatory. From the forums that I attended before, we think, if not mistaken, I think governments will do that in coming few years. I think that's good. And manufacturers must be ready to adopt and implement EPR. This, I think, it should be in positive progress as setting up new associations and all the bodies to look into this EPR. I think it is happening in Malaysia. I think quite a lot of manufacturers, especially those big brands in Malaysia, we feel that they are ready for EPR. And eco-design modulations encouragement from government, I think is a need. Since you want to do it mandatory, I think some encouragement from governments, from the tax angle or any others support. I think government should give to support for the EPR. And one important thing is like the transparency of the data of recyclable collections from our local concessionaire. We think that it should be published out. We should know also how many plastic, for example, been used in Malaysia. I mean, been produced for the products. How many percent been collecting back for recycling, or maybe for other chemical recyclings, okay, or incinerator and etc. etc. So we believe that we should have a transparent data so that everyone knowing that the progress of recyclings in Malaysia. So this is how we feel. So we're talking about outlook of EPR towards the plastic recycling industry. Materials, we as material supplies to manufacturers for them to to increase the contents of their products or their product packaging by using the recycled resin. This will be definitely one of the way. As a converters or manufacturers or brands owners, if they use recycled resins, we think that it should have certain awards by government also. But there's also always one thing is like, what happened currently in Malaysia, the virgin resin price is always higher than recycled resins. So it may reach one day, the recycling costs increase by various factors. For example, the operation cost increase, maybe government will have certain tax on that, and so on. They may have one day the price for recycled resins will be higher or equivalent to virgin price. So what is going to happen during that time? Will EPR collapse? So this is one of the questions that everyone have to think. Or otherwise, government will do some things to reduce our operation costs. They will much appreciate. Otherwise, this is one of the questions that everyone should think about it. When the times, the price for recycled resins equivalent to virgin price, or even higher. When the EPR can carry on successfully, of course, we're thinking that the plastic recycling industries or the related industries will be grow. When growing this, of course, it will benefit the job creations along the value chain. Okay, so the integrations, informal sector, improve health and safety of waste pickers and collectors. This is something that we should look into it, because there's quite a lot of informal sector. We're thinking that even government agency may not have a proper records or knowing their assets. So this is one of the things that you should looking into it also, especially those small collectors and those things and so on. That's why we say we need to, all the while when we joining into other forums, especially from the government agency, we're talking about we need to formalizations of informal recycling practice. So these are some of the points that I prepared today. As a conclusions, EPR is a need. Plastic recycling is a need. We're thinking that every countries, as we say, they should have to develop the plastic recycling industry. Of course, with others also, like waste papers or metals and all those things and so on. Why we keep talking about plastic? Of course, plastic is one of the major categories of the waste. So a few questions that just now I mentioned, some we need to have a solutions. For example, like how actually to overcome the insufficient stock for plastic recycling. And when we're talking about the developments of a new technology, for example, like chemical recycling, we have a few vendors that thinking to invest into chemical recycling and talking to Malaysia Plastic Recyclers Associations. There's one thing that we really cannot help them, or we have difficulty to help them, is the source, the feedstock. For example, they need 100 tons of plastic waste to fit into their operations. And then will be the problem also. We also don't know that where should we find the 100 over tons of plastic waste to give it to them. So MPRA will continue to talk to government agencies, see any ways actually we can help up to develop more advanced technologies recycling in Malaysia. Of course, all the while not only improving on operations, productions, we always also upgrading the environmental related instruments like water treatments and all those things and so on. So that's some of our ideas from Malaysia Plastic Recycler Associations. I would wish that the EPA will be a success in Malaysia, and we wish to see them a success in a very, very near future. So that's my presentations. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you soon. Okay.
Thank you so much, Datuk Johnson. Now, extended producer responsibility scheme examples and comparison from Germany and Chile will be the presentation by our next speaker, Ms. Jana Brickman from Cyclos and Mr. Andreas Manhart from OCO Institute Germany. Please join me to welcome them.
Thanks a lot for giving us the opportunity today to speak on a global perspective on EPR. My name is Andreas Mannert from the German Eco Institute, and I will hold this presentation together with my colleague Jana Brinkmann from Cyclos. I know that most of you are already experts on EPR. Nevertheless, for newcomers, just very shortly, what is EPR? If you look at the generic life cycle of products from production, use, and end of life, there is the so-called traditional producer responsibility. We all know that we expect products that work well, that are functional, that are safe. And if this is not the case, we turn them back and expect a replacement or a compensation. So this is the traditional producer responsibility, and extended producer responsibility basically says that the producers should also be held responsible for sound end-of-life management of their products. And this goes back to these pictures which we increasingly see around the world, and the polluter pays principle comes in, and this is a justification for EPR, that basically societies expect that those earning money with products are held responsible, that such pollution from waste does not happen. How does it look like? This is basically the system most commonly followed in most countries introducing EPR, that a government obliges producers and importers to do something, to use their resources, set up systems for collection and for proper management. There are also systems who basically built it on a mandatory commitment of the industry, but there are a couple of criteria which basically, from my perspective, very strongly speak for a mandatory system. First of all, a system can only be really effective when all producers and importers are part of it. This is difficult with a voluntary system. It also must go beyond just some months or years. It should be a long-term system. And with the voluntary systems, you don't know about company budgets and if they phase it out over time. So this is another reason why a mandatory system, at least in the long run, is preferable. Beyond this, it's recommended that EPR systems have targets. For example, that at least 80% of the volumes brought onto the market must be collected and recycled, and it must be monitored and audited. I will now speak about Germany, our EPR system. We were tasked to give a global perspective on EPR. This is actually very challenging considering the large amount of EPR systems we have across the world. So we decided to make two case studies, Germany and Chile, South America. My colleague Jana Brinkmann will soon talk about the case study in Chile, which is quite interesting and a bit different from what we have in Germany. The German system, basically we have various EPR systems for packaging, e-waste, batteries, vehicles, but I will only speak about packaging. It was introduced 30 years ago. It's, I think, the oldest EPR system in the world, and it was updated and changed various times since then. And I think this is a first message. There is no EPR system in the world that is perfect from the beginning. So regular updating, review, recasting is certainly needed and recommended. It's actually also not a plastic EPR system. It's a packaging focus on the function and not on the material. So it covers PET bottles, it covers cardboard packaging, laminates, plastic, metals, and also container glass. In our system, we differentiate between so-called system-relevant packaging, so packaging that typically ends up at private consumers at the end of life, and non-system relevant packaging. This is packaging that does not end up at consumers typically, but for example at industries. So our EPR focuses on packaging that typically ends up at private consumers. How does it work in practice? We basically have the producers, and all the producers have to do something. And we have the municipalities who are in charge of organizing waste management. In between are PROs, producer responsibility organizations, and our system allows competition between private organized profit-oriented PROs. At the moment we have 9 PROs, and these PROs make contract with producers. So each producer has to choose a PRO. They sign a contract that they manage, the PRO manages their EPR duties on behalf of the producer. They of course have to pay the PRO and they have to provide information on the type of packaging, the materials and the volumes brought onto the market. And with these packages, the PROs again approach the municipalities and sign contracts on packaging waste collection and management in a municipality. So each PRO has a number of municipalities they serve, and the municipalities give the condition. For example, waste house to household, door-to-door collection and waste collection every week must be done. So they define the criteria how it should be done in one municipality. And these PROs, of course, they also contract waste management companies who pick up the waste, who organize waste management in the municipalities, and also ensure the waste is properly collected and sound recycled. Of course, they must be paid via the PRO, and they must provide information back to the PRO on the volumes collected and recycled. This is the system, but it needs to be monitored. So we have another organization in between, a central packaging registry, where the information from the PRO flows together. This is how it looks like from an organizational perspective. How does it look like in practice for the average German citizen? The average German citizen gets used to a system with at least 4 bins. The black one is for residual waste, the brown one is for organic waste, the blue one for cardboard and paper, and the yellow bin is basically for packaging, plastic and metal. Sometimes this is also a sack, so not only a bin. And there are bring systems for container glass, which are these bulky containers. So the plastic and metal packaging and also the glass board collection is fully taken care of the PROs. And also part of paper and cardboard collection is financed by the EPR system. The packaging part. Newspapers are not packaging, they also go into this bin, but part of cardboard and paper collection are basically taken care of and financed by the system. And this is of course quite convenient for the municipalities, because for this type of the waste streams, they only have to define the conditions and sign contracts with the PRO and don't have to run own collection and operation systems. These are the targets. The targets are staged over time, so they get more ambitious typically over time. So beginning of next year, a new set of targets comes in. So these are the reuse and recycling targets, and they climb up at 90% for glass, paper, cardboard, ferrous metals, aluminum, 80% for beverage cartons, 70% for laminates, and plastics, depending how you see it, 70%. If energy recovery is included, it's 90%. So this is what the systems have to achieve. Actually, paper and cardboard rates are declining, but this is because the share between paper and cardboard is shifting, and it gets more difficult with more cardboard to recycle so much of it. We also have other obligations and requirements in our EPR system, because we realized that just organizing collection and recycling helps a lot, but it does not solve everything. We still struggle with waste volumes who are increasing over time. And Germany traditionally had a very strong market share for reusable glass bottles tied to deposit refund systems. But this market share was threatened by single-use beverage cans, single-use beverage bottles. And so some time ago, our system embedded this new element that also single-use beverage solutions must follow the same deposit refund system structure. So they must integrate in the system and also take back the packaging and also pay a deposit back when a can or a single-use bottle is handed back. This is fixed by law at 25 euro cent per bottle. This is 28 US cent per bottle, and it's quite attractive to bring back the bottles, and this ensures a level playing field, that reusable bottles don't have a disadvantage with setting up these systems and running these systems. And the take back is, of course, at the point of sale, mostly through such types of vending machines. And it actually really helped to stabilize our share of reusable bottles. This is a trend over time. The green one is the share of reusable beverage container solutions. So basically deposit refunds, glass bottle systems. We are at roughly at 40%. It does not sound so high, but it's certainly significantly higher as in most other countries. It's going down a bit, so it's not perfect. It could be higher, but this is an example, what I think a quite interesting policy EPR requirement supporting reusable items and encouraging waste reduction. It also has a quite interesting side effect. To the left you see PET bottles collected in other countries where the PET bottles are sorted out from the mixed waste stream, quite dirty. And to the right you see the German PET bottles who are brought back individually to the point of sale. They're of course much cleaner, and this is why the German PET recycling is actually quite attractive. It's quite a wanted material for the recycling industry. We also have some other requirements which are not so much known, for example, on chemical contents of packaging. So the limits for cadmium, mercury, chromium 6 and lead in packaging. Also quite new in our system is a minimum recycled content for PET beverage containers. It will kick in only in some years' time, but it already now has an effect on the market. And I think also a very famous tool, which was not invented in Europe, but is also coming into force in some weeks, is a ban of thin plastic carrier bags starting 2022. So this was a very short overview about our systems here in Germany, and I will now hand over to my colleague, Jana Brinkmann, who will tell you something about EPR in Chile. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. To complement the experiences of Germany as a country with a fully operative and long-established EPR system, we now want to look in the second case at Chile, which is a country which just very recently implemented the EPR scheme for packaging. In 2010, Chile became a member of the OECD, which was tied, among others, to meeting higher standards regarding their waste management. In an effort to meet these higher standards, the first steps towards implementing an EPR scheme were taken by public-private working groups, which built the groundwork for the further development. And as a first milestone following this development, a long-awaited waste management bill entered Congress in 2013. Then, in 2016, this bill was officially published as the Waste Management, Extended Producer Responsibility and Recycling Incentives Act. And this law sets conditions for establishing EPR systems for 6 priority types of waste, being tires, packaging, lubricant oils, electrical and electronic equipment, automotive batteries, and portable batteries. And specific details for each type of waste, including setting of objectives, targets, and the obligations associated with the producers are further regulated individually by a separate legislation. And for packaging, this specific separate legislation was officially passed in 2020 and entered into force in March 2021. So, looking at the overall development, the case of Chile clearly shows that developing and implementing an EPR scheme is anything but a simple and short process. Nevertheless, actions can be taken already before a legal framework enters into force, such as piloting projects to gain experiences on the best suitability and prepare structures, which then later will become mandatory once the system has entered into force, which we'll also highlight in a bit. Focusing now on the EPR system for packaging, the following central elements are shaping the Chilean system. First of all, the law clearly determines that the EPR system covers 5 different packaging materials, being beverage cartons, metal, paper and card, plastic and glass. Moreover, the EPR system also covers both industrial and commercial packaging waste as well as packaging waste for private consumers. The producers of industrial and commercial packaging thereby can decide if they want to join a PRO or if they want to assume the responsibility individually. However, that is not given for the producers of packaging for private consumers. And in an effort to protect small companies, the law also allows for exemptions for micro companies, which are very small companies whose annual income does not exceed approximately $73 in small and medium enterprises. For these micro companies, there are no obligations whatsoever. They do not even have to report or register, whereas small and medium enterprises at least have to provide information on how much packaging they introduce to the Chilean market. Moreover, waste management and waste collection is at the moment a big effort, so the law also clearly gives provisions on establishing a curbside collection system with waste separation at source. Then, since the law cannot generally ban any competition, it at least regulates that each district or municipality can only be served by one PRO. And lastly, since the informal sector is also rather strong in Chile, the law also clearly stipulates that integration of informal waste pickers is mandatory and anchors it to a specific policy. However, the integration of the waste pickers is also tied to registration. A specific element of the EPR system for packaging in Chile, which we want to emphasize, are the targets. As mentioned, target must be suitable for the country as well as actually relevant to achieve, so that they reflect on existing challenges which the EPR system is facing. For Chile, there are two important things to consider. Firstly, its very challenging geography with its enormous north-to-south dimension in the Andes Mountains. So while around 90% of the population lives in urban areas, primarily in the metropolitan area of Greater Santiago, large parts are very scarcely populated. At the same time, waste separation at source is only available for very few people. So one of the key targets is the number of households having access to separate collection schemes or packaging, which starts with 10% in the first year and then increases to 85% of households having access to curbside collection systems. Tied to the large absence of waste separation at source is a currently very low recycling rate of household packaging waste. As you've seen on the slides that Andreas presented, there is a big difference in the material contamination between mixed collection systems and separated ones. So, in addition, Chile also introduced recycling rates for the 5 materials. However, they have to be met by 2030 onwards to give enough time to set up the waste management separation for households. And lastly, we want to come back to actions which have been taken in Chile already before the EPR system entered into force. Even though the decree just entered into force a few months ago, there are already 2 PROs in Chile. Both of them have been founded before 2019 as a means to organize actions and efforts from the private sector side. On the one hand, there's one PRO responsible for household packaging waste and also industrial and commercial waste, and it has more than 25 members from the private sector. The other PRO, on the other hand, is exclusively for industrial packaging waste. The PRO for household packaging waste launched a recycling pilot project in the Providencia commune of the Santiago metropolitan region in September 2019, which eventually will expand separate waste collection services for packaging waste, covering 90% of all properties in the Providencia. The experiences and data gained from this project will then serve as the basis for a large-scale rollout of the system, which will be required to operate from 2022 onwards. Moreover, the extended producer responsibility law also contains provisions for a recycling fund, which is intended for recycling projects run by municipalities or associations. The recycling fund is not currently being used for waste infrastructure purposes. And an important individual project financed with state funds is known as Santiago Recicla. The project foresees the construction of 22 drop-off recycling points in the Santiago metropolitan region at a cost of approximately $5.9 million and corresponding education and awareness campaigns at a cost of about 1.2 million US dollars. The EPR systems of Germany and Chile have shown that they have both similarities, for instance, that they have an EPR for packaging and our plastics, as well as differences, for instance, their targets. And the key takeaway from both cases is that an EPR system must be actually suitable and relevant for the country that it is set up for. And finding what is relevant and suitable requires having discussions and approaches which are agreed upon by all stakeholders that are involved. And to enable such discussions, to find these approaches, a platform is needed. And such a platform is the Technical Working Group 1 of the CAPSI project, where everyone can discuss with other Malaysian stakeholders on how these approaches could look like in Malaysia, what could be challenges and how could they overcome, and at the same time receive technical guidance from my colleague Andreas and me, and also some other technical experts, to find the balance between having a robust and effective system that is yet achievable. And these meetings are all online and they're organized by CASAR, and everyone who's interested to engage in these discussions is hereby dearly invited. And with that, we end our presentations, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much, both Miss Jana and Mr. Andreas. Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned, this is a pre-recording presentation, and should you need further clarification, please email to roslina@mgtc.gov.my. We would like to thank everyone for joining this event and see you again next time. Bye!